Lucifer, a name that evokes fear, betrayal, and eternal darkness. Throughout history, he has been considered the Lord of Hell, the ruler of the world of darkness, the source of all evil. But is he really? For centuries, people have misunderstood him. Lucifer has no throne, no power to judge souls. He cannot punish anyone, nor does he have control over anyone. He is not the king of hell. He is just a wanderer, exiled, defeated, an angel who lost everything because of his pride. But his defeat does not stop him. On the contrary, it makes him the most dangerous of all. He cannot rule, but he can manipulate. He cannot force, but he can lead people to their own destruction. So what does Lucifer really want? Is he the embodiment of absolute evil or just a pawn in the greater cosmic scheme? Do we really understand him, or do we just believe what we hear? Let's share this valuable information to better understand the truth. Many people think that Lucifer wants to destroy humanity, to push humanity into darkness. But the reality is much more subtle. Lucifer does not need to kill anyone, nor does he need to break the human soul. Lucifer does not need to take up arms, does not need to declare open war, does not need to use supernatural powers to conquer humanity. He is not a brutal conqueror, nor is he a bloodthirsty dictator. So what is Lucifer's goal? He just needs to turn people away from God. He just needs people to change their minds. He is a master manipulator, a hidden controller in the dark, an invisible strategist who leads people away from God's light without them knowing. This was Lucifer's most sinister plan, a plan not to destroy humanity outright, but to change their perception bit by bit, until they voluntarily turned away from God without realizing it. He didn't need force. He just needed to sow doubt. Lucifer didn't appear as a hideous demon with sharp horns and fiery eyes. He didn't stand before people and declare, "Follow me, rebel against God." No, he didn't need to do that. He understood human nature better than anyone. He knew that a public declaration would only put people on guard. Instead, he whispered in their ears, planting small but deadly questions in them. Does God really exist? If he loves you, why do you suffer? Why do you have to obey? You can decide your own fate. These seemingly harmless questions gradually creep into people's minds, causing them to doubt, making them feel that they can live without God. Lucifer normalizes pride. Pride was the sin that caused Lucifer's fall, and now he uses this same weapon to corrupt humanity. He didn't have to tell people to abandon God. He just had to make them believe they didn't need God. He showed them his own greatness, made them believe they could control their own destiny without a higher authority. "You are the master of your own life," he whispered. "You don't need anyone to tell you how to live." And so, people began to put their ego first. They began to believe they could define their own morality. They rejected God not because they were forced to, but because they believed they no longer needed him. Lucifer made rebellion seem reasonable. He knew he couldn't overthrow God, but he could turn people against him. He whispered in their ears that God's rules were restrictive, that people needed to be liberated. He didn't outright lie. He just twisted the truth. He twisted what God had given humanity into something that looked like freedom but was actually bondage. "Why do you have to follow those rules?" he whispered. "You decide what is right and what is wrong." And slowly, people began to question the divine laws, the morals, the boundaries between right and wrong. When all the rules were broken, when people no longer realized how far they had gone, Lucifer won. Lucifer turned doubt into truth. He spread the idea that nothing was certain, that everything could be doubted. He only had to make the world destroy itself. He did not have to destroy the church, he did not have to ban religion, he did not have to violently sever all ties between man and God. He only had to make faith obsolete, unnecessary. He only had to make man put technology, science, philosophy, or himself in the place of God. When man thought he could survive without God, then Lucifer had done his job. He did not strike down man. He only puts people on the brink and makes them believe they can fly. Lucifer not only manipulates people, he also manipulates angels. Before he became the symbol of rebellion, before he fell and was cursed, Lucifer was one of the most powerful angels. He was not just an ordinary angel, but an angel created by God with intelligence, beauty, and power beyond anyone else. But Lucifer was not satisfied with that. He wanted more. And that ambition was the source of the greatest war heaven has ever fought. Lucifer saw himself as different from the other angels. He stood near the throne of God, blessed with great light and supreme power. But he did not want to be just a servant. He did not want to be just a praiser of God. He wanted to be worshipped. He wanted to be equal to the Almighty. From pride came envy, from envy came rebellion. He asked himself, why should I bow my head? Why should I obey orders? I am strong, I am greater, and I am worth more. And then Lucifer began to whisper. He walked around heaven, silently planting dangerous ideas in the minds of other angels. We are powerful. We can decide our own fate. Why should we obey? His words carried sweet temptation, and little by little, angel by angel, they began to waver. Why should we obey? He asked. Why can't we rule? And little by little, Lucifer gathered an army. A third of the angels of heaven followed him. A third of the mighty beings who once stood in the ranks of heaven, were now ready to fight against their Creator. But God was not silent. He knew what Lucifer was doing. He knew the whispers, the plots that were going on. And when the fateful day came, he was ready. Archangel Michael did not accept this rebellion. He stood up, not for power, but for absolute loyalty to God. He declared war on Lucifer and led the loyal angels to fight to protect heaven. When Lucifer gathered his army, when he thought he had enough power to overthrow God, he made the biggest mistake. He did not realize that true strength lies not in numbers, but in righteousness. As the battle began, the light of heaven shook. The songs of praise to God were gone, the peace of heaven was gone. Instead, there was the roar of angels, the sound of metal clashing as the swords in the sky swung. Lucifer charged into battle with all his might, but facing him was no ordinary angel. Facing him was Michael, the warrior of God, the bearer of the will of the Almighty. Who is like God? Michael declared loudly, the flaming sword in his hand shining like the sun. Who can be like you? Lucifer could not answer. Because deep down he knew that, no matter how strong he was, no matter how many armies he gathered, he was still just a creature. He could not become the Creator. He could not surpass God. But he had gone too far, he could not turn back. And so he fought, not for justice, not for righteousness, but for despair. Heaven shook. The battle lasted who knows how long, but when it was over, there was no doubt, Lucifer had lost. He was defeated. He and his followers were cast out of heaven, stripped of the light, stripped of the glory, stripped of the splendor they once possessed. He fell into the abyss, cursed to become Satan, the adversary, the tempter, the destroyer. But Lucifer was not gone. He was not gone. Though defeated, he had not abandoned his ambition. If he could not overthrow heaven, he would destroy the earth. If he could not become God, he will make sure that no one believes in him anymore. And so, the war does not end in heaven. It has only just begun, on earth, in the minds of men, in every choice they make. Lucifer was never intended to be evil. He is the brightest light in heaven, a perfect being, more powerful and greater than any other angel. He is not only one of the first angels, but also a guardian angel, endowed by God with extraordinary power. Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 15 describes Lucifer in wonderful terms. You are the seal of perfection. You are full of wisdom, perfect in beauty. You were anointed as a guardian angel. Not only is Lucifer blessed with extraordinary beauty, but God has entrusted him with the most important tasks. He stands near God's throne, surrounded by divine glory. His light was unlike any other angel, it sparkled with a splendor and power that no angel could match. He was more than just an angel, he was the Creator's masterpiece. But that was why he was the most dangerous. Lucifer's beauty was more than his appearance. His mind was sharp, his vision vast, his intellect far surpassing that of many other angels. He was not only God's singer, he was also one of the angels tasked with guiding, protecting, and managing the divine order. When he spoke, heaven trembled. When he acted, other angels bowed. But even the most radiant angel could fall into darkness. Because when a being realizes his own greatness, that is when he becomes dangerous. Lucifer was not only beautiful, he possessed an invisible ambition. He was not satisfied with being just an angel, even the most powerful. He wanted more than just serving God, he wanted more. His ego grew, and pride took root in his mind like a slow-burning fire, spreading and spreading, unable to be extinguished. He looked up at God's throne, and a thought suddenly came to him, why can't I sit there? Lucifer began to compare himself to his Creator. He was not like the other angels, he was more perfect, more powerful, more great. But there was one thing he could not have, God's supremacy. It was the one thing beyond his reach. And that made him angry. Why should he, the most powerful angel, bow to someone he believed was no better than he? Why should a glorious being like him serve? Lucifer's danger came not from his power, but from his mindset. He did not rebel on a whim. He was a strategist, a master manipulator. He did not challenge God immediately. He took time to observe, to think, to plan. He understood that if he wanted to change heaven, he could not act alone. He needed allies, and so he began to whisper. He approached the angels around him, who revered him, who admired his power and wisdom. We are strong, he said. We are not inferior. Why should we obey? We can rule. His words were not commands, but questions that sowed doubt. A little doubt, then a little more, until a third of the angels began to wonder, is Lucifer right? They didn't realize they were being manipulated, they just felt that they were being open to a truth they had never considered before. Lucifer didn't directly ask them to betray God. He just made them doubt. He just made them feel that they deserved more than they had. He simply made them believe that there was another way, another future, another destiny, one where they didn't have to bow, didn't have to obey, didn't have to praise anyone but themselves. The danger with Lucifer wasn't his sheer power. He didn't have to fight for power by force. He just had to sow doubt, and the rest came naturally. When an angel starts asking questions, he's looking for answers. And Lucifer had the answers they wanted to hear. It was only because of his pride and greed that Lucifer could not accept eternal submission. He was not like the other angels, who happily accepted their place in the divine hierarchy. He saw himself, too great, too powerful. He could not bear the fact that no matter how perfect, no matter how powerful, he was still a creature, still kneeling before his Creator. In his eyes, it was not fair. If he could outshine anyone, if he could attain absolute perfection, why could he not ascend to the throne? Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 14 records his thoughts, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. But heaven was not made to have two supreme beings. There is only one God, and that is an unchangeable truth. For Lucifer, however, this was not a self-evident truth, but an obstacle, an invisible wall blocking his ambitions. Lucifer did not just want to rule. He wanted to be worshipped. Not just by the angels under his command, but by the entire universe. He wanted absolute power, that every knee should bow before him. He did not want to be just another angel among those who served him. He wanted to be the one to whom all beings should aspire. And that was his greatest mistake. He did not realize that his power, his wisdom, his beauty, none of it came from him. He did not create himself. Everything he had was given to him by God. But he refused to acknowledge that. He thought that his power was his own, that he did not need God to continue to exist. And in that moment, Lucifer committed the unforgivable sin, absolute pride. Pride is not just pride in oneself. It was a fire that could burn away reason, making a creature believe he needed no one, that he could be his own creator. Lucifer let that fire consume his soul. It blinded him, making him believe he could be equal to God. But the truth remained the same: no one can be equal to the Almighty. God cannot be replaced, cannot be overthrown. And no matter how powerful Lucifer was, he was still only a creation. But he refused to accept that. Lucifer had gone too far, and he knew there was no turning back. Once an angel had fallen into pride, nothing could save him. He began to manipulate the other angels, convincing them that they too were being held back, that they too deserved better. He didn't want to rebel alone, he wanted a revolution. And he succeeded in shaking heaven with his ambition. But there was one thing he could not foresee: no one can defeat God. And the rebel, no matter how strong, will eventually fall. The truth is that Lucifer does not rule hell. Lucifer does not rule hell. That is one of the greatest misconceptions that mankind has believed for centuries. He is not the king of hell, he does not sit on a throne of fire, he does not hold the power to judge souls. He has no power to decide the fate of anyone, he cannot decide who is damned and who is forgiven. There is only one who holds ultimate power over all souls, and that is not Lucifer. Job 1:7 says, Satan roams the earth, roaming about. He has no kingdom of his own. He has no absolute dominion. He has only one mission: to sabotage God's plan, to gradually pull humanity away from his grace. He cannot punish anyone. No one is sent to hell by his power. But what he can do, and does it perfectly, is whisper lies into people's ears. He does not need to force anyone to sin. He only needs to make people think they don't need God. A whisper is enough to change a mind, a thought is enough to bend a soul. And that's what makes him so dangerous. People often think of Lucifer as a giant, cunning, terrifying, all-powerful. But in reality, his power lies not in his physicality or his power to rule. His power lies in his manipulation. There is no sword sharper than a lie disguised as truth. There are no shackles on the soul stronger than the false choices people think they make. He doesn't rule hell. He rules earth. Lucifer doesn't want to be in a prison. He doesn't want to be a jailer. He wants to be free, to go wherever he wants, to do whatever he wants. And that's why he wanders. He is everywhere, in the smallest decisions, in seemingly harmless temptations, in ideas that seem wise but actually lead people away from God. He makes people believe that they can decide for themselves what is right and wrong. He makes people believe that hell is not real, that judgment does not exist, that everything is negotiable. When people lose faith in God's justice, they are easily drawn into self-destructive choices. He doesn't need to force people to sin, he just needs to normalize sin. Lucifer is a wanderer. He has no throne, no stable kingdom. He has only one goal: to weaken humanity, to pull them away from the light, to push them into the darkness. He doesn't control hell, but he can make people walk into hell without anyone pushing them down. He doesn't need to force, he just guides. And that's the scariest thing. No matter what, Lucifer cannot defeat God. He knows it. He knows it. Since his fall, he has recognized an unchangeable truth: he is only a creature, not the creator. But he refuses to accept it. He knows that his end is predetermined, that one day he will be completely destroyed, without power, without influence, without existence. He knows that his fate is written in Revelation 20 verse 10, the dragon, Satan, was thrown into the lake of fire, where he will be tormented forever and ever. But Lucifer is not resigned to going into destruction alone. He wants to take as many souls with him as possible. If he cannot defeat God, he will fight the only way he knows how: by destroying what God loves most, humanity. He does not need to use force. He does not need to appear as a hideous demon, nor does he need to terrorize people with violence. He simply does what he has always done since the fall, whispers in people's ears, sows doubt, stimulates pride, deceives them with what they want to hear. You don't need God. You can decide for yourself what is right and wrong. You can be your own master. He knows how to appeal to the deepest human instincts, the desire for control, for power, for absolute freedom without moral or spiritual limits. He doesn't have to drag anyone to hell. He just makes people go there. No coercion, no punishment, just guiding them with lies. He makes them believe that hell isn't real, that judgment is an outdated concept, that God is too merciful to punish anyone. When people no longer believe in God's justice, they lose their fear, and when they do, they easily fall into self-destructive choices without realizing it. He makes evil seem normal, sin seem reasonable, and separation from God seem an obvious choice. But no matter how successful he is, the outcome will be the same. Judgment Day will come. When the angels of God come, when the eternal light sweeps away the darkness, Lucifer will have nowhere to run. He has been defeated once, and he will be defeated for the last time. No more plots will save him, no more lies will buy him time. He will be thrown into the lake of fire, not as a ruler, but as a condemned man. No more power, no more glory, no more followers. He will be destroyed, not by weapons or violence, but by the absolute justice of God. Lucifer knows this. He knew from the moment of his fall that this day would come. But he will not stop. He never stops. And until the very end, he will continue to fight. Not to win, but to take as many souls as possible. Because for him, if he must destroy, he will not destroy alone. Lucifer chose his own fate, a fate of pride, rebellion, and destruction. He chose to turn away from the light, to reject God's mercy, to walk into the darkness with no way back. But what about humans? We are not cursed like him. We still have a chance. He cannot control them, but he can whisper in their ears, sow doubt, make them believe they do not need God. And then they choose their own path. Pride can destroy everything. It cost Lucifer his glory, and it can cost humans their souls. No one can be on par with God, no one can challenge the Almighty without consequences. Lucifer tried, and he lost. And in the end, God still won. No force can change that. No plan can overthrow him. No one can stand in his way. This truth cannot be distorted, cannot be hidden, cannot be changed. Lucifer chose the path of fall. But what about you? What will you choose? Come back while God's mercy still exists. Because one day, when the door of mercy closes, no one can open it anymore. What do you think about this? Leave a comment below.